And welcome into the Sporting News Studios. Joining Stephen Levine and myself today, I'm Tom Vandervoort. That's Matt Crossman, senior writer. You just got back from Alabama, sir.
I did. I drove out there for the big, well, I shouldn't say big. They killed Kent State so bad it really wasn't a big game. But to watch the home opener against Kent State, which, of course, was their first game since the devastating tornadoes in April.
And that's what your cover story is about in this week's Sporting News. Tell us what you found, because, you know, football's often a distraction in a sense from life, and that's always good, but it was more than that, really.
Yeah, I think the team as a whole certainly provides the community a distraction, you know, gives them something else to think about. And I was struck by how much people were looking forward to the game, even back like late July when I was talking to people about the game. They had it marked and circled and X'd and read around it on their calendar. But then there's a lot more to it than that, too, as far as the way that football can help a community heal.
You know, I was really interested to read the story of Carson Tinker, the long snapper for Alabama, who himself got injured during the tornado and his girlfriend tragically lost her life. He said something that I thought was really interesting. He said, I want to be accountable. Now, of course, he was talking about football, but it seems like that statement could really apply to Alabama's approach, the football team's approach to this whole situation.
Yeah, it was interesting that it's almost like he felt guilty for having missed time from the football team, so he had to get better. And that was one way that football helped him heal, was it gave him motivation to get better. And I said that to him. I said, are you talking like guilt? And he kind of laughed. I said, well, not guilt, because I think I'd be motivated to get better regardless. But yeah, I see my teammates out here.
Yeah, I think maybe.
Yeah, he sees his teammates out there busting their rear ends, and he feels like he has to do that too. And in a way, you know, it's too bad for a young kid to become a symbol. It's not fair, really. But he really, I think, has become a symbol for how, you know, you got to pick yourself up and persevere and keep going. Like, you really, you know, for at least one reason, you don't have a choice.
And talk about the leadership, too, of Nick Saban. He's going to play a big role down there.
Without question. And I said in the piece that no matter how many national championships he wins or games, he's going to be remembered in Tuscaloosa for this. He was the galvanizing force, along with the mayor, Walt Maddox. I mean, the mayor was #1. But in terms of, you know, like a non-politician, Nick Saban was the most visible and most active, and really probably the most important person in the recovery effort.
And you said it sort of brought out a side of him that you don't often see. Obviously, we see him mostly as a football coach in post-game interviews on the sideline, but it brought out a different side of him.
It did. You know, his foundation, Nick's Kids, will pay for 13 houses to be built by Habitat for Humanity, which is striking. I mean, that's 13 houses is a lot. But the people that I talked to said, yeah, that's important, but you should have seen him, you know, getting down on one knee and listening to people tell their stories. And I heard that over and over again. If it was either about Saban or about players, how important it was for the players to be in the community and listening to people, and that the actual literal physical work they did was important, but the being a person was more.
Now talk about some of the people that you talked to that weren't football players and how the football team and this game in particular touched them and worked into their lives.
Yeah, there's two non-football segments that I really focus on. One is a young lady named Priscilla Nail, and she works at a vending booth outside the stadium. And I just kind of wandered around interviewing people to see what their reactions were, what had happened to them. And she lost her house. She lost her job because she works as a trainer, and the gym just doesn't exist. I mean, there's a whole section of Alabama or Tuscaloosa that the street just got wiped out. There's nothing there. And her parents lost their house too. But the football for her, she talked a lot about the normalcy, that going to the game on Saturday and working the booth is normal, and she craved that you know, her life was just, you know, thrown up like a bunch of cards, and the game sort of at least puts them back together.
You know, I grew up in a college town, but the college town I grew up in has, I think, a little more outside of the University of Virginia than perhaps Tuscaloosa does. It's hard to imagine how this recovery would be progressing. I'm sure it would be, but without the Crimson Tide.
That's absolutely true. Now, if you know, the university is the biggest employer in the city, and football is the dominant, you know, sort of public face of the university, so it's the most, I mean, it's in the state, really. It's the most important public institution there is. So it was obviously going to play a big role, you know, and there was, but the way that it's done it, I think, has been surprising.
Great story, Matt, and you'll definitely want to take a look at that in this week's Sporting News. Also, you can get it at sportingnews.com. For Matt Crossman and Stephen Levine, I'm Tom Vandervoort, and we'll see you next time.